Christchurch is the most cricketing loving region in the country, obviously. We love our cricket, we are very into it.
You've got a whole bucket of paint.
Cricket followed the Bible. You know, wherever the Bible went, cricket followed, and so within a year of the first 4 ships arriving, cricket was played, and it's been, I suppose, a part of the fabric of Christchurch's and Canterbury's culture ever since.
Christchurch is an amazing place to grow up. It's got a very rich sporting history. There's a very proud and often ridiculed feeling about sport in Canterbury.
That's it, that's a good hit. Way you go, good enough.
Looking at what's happening on Saturdays in formal ways, as well as much as the informal cricket that goes on in people's backyards and in parks as well. So, cricket's definitely a big part of a lot of people's lives in Christchurch.
A lot of our memorable occasions for New Zealand cricket have come from Canterbury, from Christchurch. Our most famous cricketing family in New Zealand, the Hagley family. Walter Hagley was the patriarch of cricket in this country. Sir Richard, our greatest ever cricketer, all from Christchurch. When you think of Christchurch and Canterbury, it's a garden city, it lends itself to cricket.
It's made for sport with the flat surfaces that are around, and the climate allows you to try everything.
Everyone actually cares about the cricket. From a junior level up, everyone's always into it. It's just a huge part of Christchurch, and I think it's something that we need to keep developing and push on for the future,
Well, we haven't had international cricket here, like Test cricket, for 9 years. And so our youngsters and the cricketing public and those followers have been denied.
I think as an aspiring young cricketer, it's pretty important that we've got the World Cup coming to Christchurch. I think we've been deprived of high quality cricket in the city and missing out watching some pretty cool players come over to New Zealand and play, so it'll be exciting to have those superstars of the game on our doorstep that we can learn off and watch in the flesh play rather than just on TV. It'll make the dream of playing international cricket real.
Are there people in there?
We were pretty lucky. I was away at the time. We were over in the subcontinent. My family was still here when it happened. It was obviously a pretty devastating time.
I'll never forget that day. We had four boys, and 2 of our children were at preschool and 2 of them were at school, and riding on the road, and it was like driving on a waterbed, because all the liquefaction had come up under the roads, and you were literally as if you were driving on water.
I remember having to call an emergency meeting, calling all the club people together, and basically having to say, look, what do we do here?
Holy shit. Come here. Shit.
There was a lot of grounds which were badly damaged with liquefaction and lateral spreading and that sort of stuff, and as well as that, of course, a lot of families with massive upheaval who'd had to leave town or were concentrating on digging themselves out and stuff like that. So the formal cricket season was cancelled when those earthquakes struck.
The whole park.
But initially, we said to clubs, look, we don't believe we should have any official cricket going on here. People have got all sorts of things they need to deal with. It's not right. It's just not right. However, we understand the role that sport or cricket can play in a family, in a community. So if you find within your community as a club that you want to offer cricket, or people are saying, look, we'd love to play our sport still, do it. Just go ahead and do it. And some clubs did that.
What was it like not having cricket? Tell me about that.
Oh, that was horrible. It was so boring and hated it.
We've got to do something for the kids so they don't lose all that cricket time, plus get them back to a bit of normality, just out there playing cricket. So we worked out the teams we had, and we had to find opposition from, and East Shirley got hit quite badly over the east side. We rang up Dave Teal and Henk Stoffers, and they just brought about 8 or so teams over here, and away we went.
I
Well, it was hard for kids to have a normal Saturday morning. And when we found out with Maris Harewood, they organised games for people who just wanted to play. It was just amazing. We went there every Saturday morning and it was organised for us.
The first Saturday we had those games, it was drizzling. It was just a low cloud, heavy drizzle. The kids still played in the rain. It was absolutely fantastic.
That Saturday, we couldn't get the kids off the field. We gave them the option, stop and started getting a bit more rain. But no, they wanted to play. So that was a fantastic thing. So we had the support of a lot of parents, and that was good to see as well, because parents needed a break as well as the kids.
We were in a mixed team and some earthquakes were just going on, but we just kept on playing because it was fun. We didn't stop.
You had grounds full of young kids playing cricket, within 3 to 4 weeks of the earthquake. But these kids were coming from all over the place. From the east, they were getting in cars and travelling over potholed roads and all sorts of things to enable them to play cricket again. And so that was the initial reaction and response. It was left really to the communities.
At the outbreak of World War I, there seemed to be a prevailing attitude within New Zealand that if you could still play cricket, everything was okay. The main thing was to keep the game going so the boys had something to look forward to when they came back. And because of that, New Zealand had a relatively short break in first-class cricket during World War I. And that attitude that everything's okay if you're cricketing, if you're playing cricket, you can forget about the other worries, seems to be something that came through in Christchurch really strongly after the earthquakes, especially with cricket being played so soon after the event.
I think that the earthquake had a massive impact on sports right across the board, and actually getting life back to normal as far as possible was, sporting clubs are just one of those ways of bringing communities back together, focusing on something that's not the disaster that you've had to confront. And that to me is the biggest thing about how sport plays such an important role in our recovery as a city. The sad thing about the February earthquake back in 2011 was that Christchurch was going to be one of the host cities for the Rugby World Cup. And this was something that all New Zealand was really, the eyes of the world were on us for the Rugby World Cup. And Christchurch missed out. We couldn't possibly host the teams and the supporters and the fans. We couldn't possibly do that.
Oh, well, it was a really difficult time. I mean, obviously when the earthquakes happened in Christchurch, everyone's key concern was for Christchurch and for the people in Christchurch. But, the harsh reality was that we had to deliver a Rugby World Cup a few months later. So some pretty quick decisions did need to be made. And so had to make that very, very sad and very, very difficult decision with all the various stakeholders to remove the games.
So there were several earthquakes in the Canterbury earthquake sequence that induced very strong shaking at this particular site. Obviously the September Darfield earthquake, but also the Boxing Day earthquake in 2010, the February 22nd earthquake, which induced the most violent shaking at this area, the June earthquakes, and the December earthquakes. And each one of those earthquakes caused some amount of subsidence, caused some liquefaction in this region. And if you get an earthquake like that February 1, which we would estimate as sort of a 1 in 6,000 to 1 in 10,000 year intensity of shaking, it's obviously beyond the design capacity of most of the structures in the built environment. If you get those, somewhat rare events, then you can have catastrophic loss and damage, and that's what's happened in this instance.
Lancaster Park was New Zealand's oldest test venue. A lot of firsts happened at Lancaster Park and a lot of incredible performances happened there over the years. So it's a massive loss for the game, and it's a game that is so entrenched in its history to lose a space in a venue like that.
history of Lancaster Park came about because 3 young men, Frederick Wilding being the leader of the group, lived on the other part of Christchurch. And they all used to practice at Hagley Oval area. And they had to do a lot of walking to get back home. And they saw this swampy land, so they decided to set up a company to buy this park. And it just so happened they bought it from Mr. Lancaster. And a great name. I always thought it had something to do with the royal family or aristocracy of some sort. No, he was just a farmer. Lancaster Park, being from a swamp, had a very high water table. And that's why there was also, in the early days, a swimming pool, public swimming pool. But the water was like ice. And even on the hottest Canterbury days, people dumped in and dumped out. And then when they started building on the other side of the grounds, the new high terraces and things like that, they found suddenly they had to stop work because they just found water oozing up everywhere. But that's why they never had any problem with water. They had plenty of it underneath them.
So what we've got here is some clean sand. A lot of this Eastern Christchurch sits on this particular material. The perfect recipe for liquefaction is to have either a fine sand or a coarse silt and high water pressures. So lots of saturated water, a high water table. Christchurch has a lot of those two things. So if we think about this in the context of the stadium, we start to get into this highly liquefiable material going down about 3 meters or so and below that. And what you find is that everything's able to sustain a load in its current state. But when I began to shake this material like this, the material just begins to flow. It loses all of its capacity to hold a load on top. And as a result, it basically loses its strength. And so everything on the surface responds to that by, sinking in different ways, tilting, folding, subsiding, and so on. And that stand has really been affected by that. In fact, the whole ground has.
I mean, Lancaster Park was where we went to watch the big stuff, the international stuff. I think it's sort of, looking back, that's where your dreams are made. If you're an international sport, it's great to have an international venue because that's where your young kids go and they can watch the best. I sort of used to go there and dream of playing there one day. It was a good wicket that did a bit, it always did a bit. And that helped us a lot, and particularly when you've got Richard Hagley in your team.
Got it around to Hagley. Short, there it is. 4 runs to the backward point boundary. Richard Hagley, born and bred in Christchurch.
Hagley, and he's edged it behind and he's out, caught behind. Hagley takes 5. New Zealand win this test match by an inning.
Yeah, well, I have some good memories of Lancaster Park, and perhaps the major memory that I had at Lancaster Park, of course, was getting the 400th test wicket. Be the first bowler in the history of the game to do that. The game stopped when that 400th wicket happened, and Bishan Bedi came out, who was the manager of the Indian cricket team, and 2 little children came out with 400 roses on a silver tray. So it was, Lancaster Park still holds some very fine memories for me.
Well, probably my one favourite memory of Lancaster Park was after I'd finished umpiring. And I saw Nathan Astle score that mammoth score at Lancaster Park. That was absolutely brilliant, the best against England, the best we've ever seen.
Goes Astle again. Whoa, it's miles back. There he goes again. That's huge. That's on the roof. Momentum into the stroke. 384. Oh, hello! What a shot into the combox! That is 200 for Nathan Astle, but nobody in history has made 200 as fast as this.
Brendan McCullum's 2020 century against Australia, where he was bending down and scooping the world's fastest bowler back over his head for 6. Just incredible performances at the ground.
That's brilliant. See, that's brilliant. That's Brendan McCullum. And then that's what happens in the end. That's massive. Oh, this could be 6. It is 6. It's 15 yards over the top. Yes, what 100. What 100 that is.
We had a game to raise money and awareness for the tsunami victims, where an international team got put together. So it was a New Zealand side playing an international 11. The pressure was off, and I was able to have a day against Shane Warne and Muralitharan.
Ball in his area. He's not slogging, ladies and gentlemen. And here we go again. There's another one. That's a 7-6. He just looks like he could do it all day long, ladies and gentlemen. This is off one of the best bowlers in the world, one of the best all-time spin bowlers.
Slightly shell-shocked, I'm sure, these World 11 players at the carnage that's going on here. Oh, dear me. Dear me. That makes it 8. An octet of 6s.
He's only 10 away from 100 now, Stephen Fleming, of just 47 balls. This is an unbelievable innings. This is a max innings from the park.
Post-earthquake, obviously, it's been written off, and obviously cricket had to find another venue to re-establish itself. So we need to look forward, and we can't dwell on Lancaster Park anymore, but obviously Hagley Oval has been developed, and I think that will, in time, truly establish itself as an iconic venue.
It's a phenomenal opportunity that's come out of tragedy, and you've got to get it right. But how do you manage that whole process? And I'm staggered when I talk to people from Sarah and council and developers, just how much work and planning is going to go into this. You get one shot at it. A lot of cities don't ever get another shot at it, but to have another shot at it and work with what was pretty special already and try and carve something out even better is it's very daunting. But I think that's what most Cantabrians would want, a city that's going to hold up in the future, and a city that's really going to be world class.
We've been presented with this great opportunity to reimagine the city. So the tragedy and loss that we've experienced has given us a chance to actually address some of the shortcomings of the city pre-earthquake, learn the lessons from international disaster recovery, put them all together and come up with this new vision for the city. The blueprint is a planning framework for the central city. So it's the area within the 4 avenues is about 420 hectares, and 70% of the commercial buildings in the central city were wrecked as a result of the earthquakes, and about 1/3 of the inner city residents, their houses were wrecked as well, and they moved out. And the government felt it was very important for this region and this city that the central city was rebuilt and a healthy heart was regenerated to help support the region and the wider city. And the minister gave us some anchor projects to locate the best positions for. And one of them was a cricket oval. Cricket was very important to me because we played it every night in the summer in our backyard. I was named after Don Bradman. Very big disappointment to my parents that I didn't really go beyond the backyard cricketing stage. The developers and the investors are just now starting to really get things cracking. And I would say we're about 25% into the regeneration of the city. We've made a really good start, built some momentum, and I think people realise now, hey, that something great can happen.
This is going to be a wonderful area. We're calling this, my buildings here, the terrace. So this will be the terrace, which is obviously opposite the river, and any street that's called Oxford Terrace, Cambridge Terrace means it faces the river. And then on my left here, we have a look out here, this is what we call Restart. So Restart's our container shopping precinct that evolved straight after the earthquake. And we ended up using containers and cutting the sides out of them. Quite a quirky sort of thing, but it's become part of Christchurch's culture. This is what we call the retail precinct, and this is where it's all happening at the moment. Christchurch is just such an exciting and vibrant place to see it. Every day you come in, something else has changed. As you can see, we're putting steel up as fast as we can.
So the New York Times named Christchurch as the second best city to visit in 2014, and the Lonely Planet named it number 6 in 2013. This is really amazing for this city, and I think that recognition is coming from some of the more innovative projects that are going on here. So Gap Fill is an urban regeneration initiative, and we take vacant sites or empty buildings and activate them with temporary projects. And that whole idea is about getting people into the city, but giving people the chance to participate in their city's recovery, and by doing that, to feel connected to the city.
When people come to Christchurch for the Cricket World Cup, they're obviously coming for the cricket, but they'll also be surprised about the vibrancy here. It's a landscape still to be developed even further, and the Rise Street Art Festival provided some of that amazing imagery to just create a different canvas. And it's more than just art in the city, it's about urban regeneration, it's about urban activism, it's about all sorts of, I think, very cool opportunity for people to think differently about your city. We're an attractive place to come and visit.
We have another project that we've just finished, or almost finished, called the Grandstandium, and that is a mobile mini grandstand. And we hope to run a French cricket tournament as well during the Cricket World Cup. So we'll have here the French Cricket World Cup concurrently.
Cricket is a family. Yeah, it really is. Everyone knows everyone in cricket, as they do in sport. But cricket through its history, and families tend to play cricket. The grandfather played, so the father played, so the son played, the daughter played. It just tends to run through families that way. Yeah, and there's a lot of train spotters and people involved in cricket who are involved in the sport for what it is.
The earthquake, was incredibly disruptive for people, and it blew family friends apart, because some suddenly had to go and live across town or live somewhere else or weren't in the area, and they would come back across town for cricket, so they got to see their friends. Just normality I think is what people needed, and this was part of normality. The fact that you could come up here and all you did was chase a ball around and not be at home and talk about earthquakes, which is what Canterburyans have done for a long time.
I actually remember the first committee meeting we had back in early March 2011, and I said, right, what are we going to do now? And the general consensus was, right, let's get stuck in, let's roll our sleeves up and do it. We got good support from the international cricketing fraternity, and we were very appreciative of all that largesse that came our way. It was basically designed by one of our members. We got a local architect to do the plans, we got a local structure engineer to do the engineering stuff, and one of our members, who's a builder, won the contract to do the rebuild. And of course, at the end of the process, there was lots of working bees involved, because it was the members who basically did the painting. So it was really good to have everybody at the end there playing a part, getting stuck in to make the club rooms what they are.
Today we've got the Action Cricket Primary School Christchurch finals on here. We have the 16 top schools here in Christchurch. The competition's been running for around about 15 years, so it's very popular, and we've introduced the finals day in recent years where everyone comes together and has the opportunity to walk away with the shield. We've got some famous names out here as well. We've got Riley McCullum, who's Brendan McCullum's son, and also Mitchell McMillan, who's Craig McMillan's son. So there's some big cricketing names, and just goes to show that some of the youngsters of these famous players are starting to come through as well.
He represents old boys collegians, bouncing around cover point area constantly on a Saturday morning, but it's great to be able to go down and watch him as well, and just see, I guess, the sheer enthusiasm which kids play with, and sometimes you need reminding as a I guess, professional sportsman as well, that it is, I guess, a romantic sport which people just fall in love with when they're young. So my boy loves it. He's got a bit of work to do. He needs to improve on his technique, but I'm sure over time he'll get there.
Canterbury has undoubtedly produced some of New Zealand's greatest cricketers. They've probably had more national representatives than any other province has. Names like Hagley obviously sort of sits at the top of the list of things like that, but some of the players in recent years as well, thinking of somebody like Debbie Hockley, who was recently inducted to the ICC Hall of Fame.
I actually got picked for the New Zealand team when I was 15. Still don't entirely understand why, but anyway, that's history. Played from 1979 was my first trip to Australia until my last game for New Zealand, which was in 2000 when we won the Women's World Cup against Australia out at Lincoln. When I was a youngster, sort of 10, 11, 12, used to love coming down here and especially getting the autographs of the players. I had my little hard-covered autograph book, and the players used to sit just in the #1 stand, just in the seats above where the tunnel were. So, I wandered around very politely and asked Mr. Hagley if I could have his autograph, and they were happy days.
Hagley to Tabaret.
Well, as a youngster, of course, being brought up in a family cricketing environment, it was cricket, obviously, with Dad having played for New Zealand and captaining the 49 side on the tour of England, and having brothers as well that loved cricket. In the era that I first started, I think the New Zealand team probably had 6 Canterbury representatives. So when you come into a Canterbury team for the first time, you're playing with a lot of experienced players, and so you learn, the hard way basically as to how to prepare and how to train and what the expectations are, and so you grow with those international players, and then all of a sudden you become an international player yourself.
Certainly remember my early days was Dad playing a little bit. Remember rocking down to trainings a few times, and to have guys like Craig McMillan coaching me now is pretty exciting, because he remembers me running around as a little fella.
It was a pretty important part of my life, and now I'm going into that next phase, if you like, watching a son do the same thing. So it's pretty close to my heart, and really looking forward to the next few years.
Bless this ground that we are playing on today, people, and we're looking forward to a great result.
Well, I think everyone grew up playing cricket in some shape or form in the summer. There's a kind of an expression about playing in the backyard. We didn't have a backyard, we had a big front yard, and so we played cricket there regularly. It was just one of those fun games where if you have a lot of kids in the neighbourhood, you can make up 2 teams pretty quickly and just have fun.
The backyard cricket rules can be fairly complicated, convoluted. They depend on the environment, and the main rule pretty much is the ball has to end up landing on the grass or the bricks. So if it stays in the garden, you're gone. But what it means is you can whack it into the side of the house, you can cannon off and bounce it on the ground, and you're still good to go. Except that we play, as you always should, one hand, one bounce. Over the back you've got a tree and then there's a stump behind it. Both of those you get 10 runs if you hit them. So that means any tight game can actually be won or lost quite easily.
So you get 4 for a win, 2 for a draw, 1 for bonus if it's 6 and under. Score that. This is a run differential. So if you get a couple of 4s, you work out what the run differential is, and that's how you decide any draws. Loser gets the big spoon hanging over there.
I've never won my own tournament. Never. Particularly looking forward to what they've done in town. Can't wait. We've all got tickets to go to the games, take the kids down, sit on the bank. It is going to be magic sitting in Hagley Park watching World Cup. Fantastic.
When decisions were made by cricket to move away from what was then Jade Stadium or AMI or Lancaster Park or whatever people remember it as, they were really wondering where the home of cricket would be for Christchurch. And the desire was always to move to Hagley Park, but I think at that time they just thought it was too difficult.
The thing is that Hagley Park is special to Christchurch, and our ancestors, you know, sort of set aside a part of the city purely for a park.
Hagley Oval's history is incredibly rich, both in terms of cricket and Canterbury and Christchurch society in general. You know, the games were being played there from the 1850s when the first settlers arrived. It became a massive part of the city in its development. It was more than just cricket being played there. So it's fantastic today to see that cricket's returned to its spiritual home in Christchurch.
In my lifetime, it's always been a cricket ground. There was St Albans and Old Boys and Riccarton, and that was their home of club cricket. You know, so Hagley Park is, in essence, in the fabric of cricket. In my lifetime, that's where it was played in Christchurch.
This was Hagley Park, its first game, 1863-64. There's about a dozen tents around it. And I've always been cynical enough to think, early days of corporate hospitality, there are outside those tents, you can see if you blow it up big enough, there are blankets, and people are sitting down having a picnic, and there's a large crowd there. And in the foreground, there is also 6 horses pulling a carriage. And at the back of that carriage, there's a big notice, England cricket team. And that's why this ground is imbued with history.
And so it seemed right that we should try and bring Test cricket and a home for cricket back here. And in fact, our initial legal advice was don't try it. You know, there's too much red tape here around the Reserves Act or Hagley Park Management Plan. If you are going to get there, it's going to take a long time, could take a lot of money, and then there's no guarantee you're going to get here in the end. Then, of course, the Cricket World Cup came along, and we had to decide, are we in a position to put a bid to host any Cricket World Cup matches here? Bearing in mind, we've got no ground really. I think we had a block out in the middle of here and that's it. And it was a very courageous move, I think, to say, yeah, we're going to bid for it. We still know there's a number of different hoops to work through, but we're going to bid for it. Not only that, we're going to bid for the opening game and the opening ceremony.
When I started working for the Cricket World Cup, you know, it was really important to me that Christchurch had a key role in this project. And what surprised me and what was really lovely was that when I started working with my international cricket colleagues and colleagues in cricket in Australia, that sentiment was really widely felt. It wasn't just about me as a New Zealander, it was about so many other people that really felt it keenly that Christchurch would play a really important role in this tournament.
Nothing has really been straightforward and easy in this, but yeah, that's fine because it's worth doing. So the project build was tight, and we also had, because we're building in Hagley Park, there were a number of conditions we had to meet to ensure that users of Hagley Park weren't, I suppose, affected significantly by the building as well. We had floods throughout our building project, so we had the 1 in 100 year floods hit Christchurch, and then we had 1 in 100 year floods again around about 2 weeks later or something. And look, there was opposition. At times I'd turn up to work and there'd be messages on my phone sort of saying, what the hell are you doing? You're taking Hagley Park away from us, and pinning things up on our doors. But we had to fight through that because we believed, I suppose, in the vision that we were trying to create. And also not only for the international cricketers, but as an inspiration for our young cricketers coming up, young people to be able to see their heroes, rub shoulders with a Brendan McCullum here. It was really important that we kept hold of that dream and tried to make it work.
There was a lot of debate about what the design should be, or could be in terms of this environment. We wanted something that was traditional. What we've got here now replicates a number of famous cricket grounds throughout the world. Adelaide, for example, the Mound Stand at Lord's. We think it fits in beautifully to the environment, and we're delighted with the product.
Well, I think the idea was really to make the building as little or unobtrusive as it could be in that setting, where it's got such a strong character already. So the base of the building is really sitting as part of the embankment into the ground. The canopy above is really the idea of setting up a great space during an event, and the idea that more tents might join that on the day. So it's this idea of a temporary structure in a way, but also the idea of something light that's floating within the canopy of the trees. As a foreground to the Port Hills, which you see when you're sitting around the embankment looking back across the field. This is one of the first anchor projects, but if you look at it, it's a fairly modest project in relation to the other ones, which have more ambitious or more heroic objectives. But I think in some ways, because it's working within Hagley, it gains its strength or its mass or its mana from where it is in Hagley Park. So in some ways it's just working carefully within that park, and it's an extension of that park, really developing or enhancing a use that was already there.
You can put all the infrastructure around a ground, but if the 20.12 metres of clay in the middle doesn't play quite right, well, it can have a massive effect on the game. So people like Rupert Bull and his team, Ash and Steve, they've done a fantastic job over the last 3 years in terms of bringing that pitch and the outfield up to speed, and it's rated as one of the better surfaces in New Zealand now, so we really look forward to seeing what they can produce, both for the Test match, the One Day International, and of course the World Cup.
When I arrived for the build of the ground about 2.5 years ago, it was predominantly a club outfield and blocks, and there was 6 blocks located over the whole surroundings of the area. And so when we got there, we had to pretty much redesign and spec out exactly where the area we wanted to cover, re-landscape that completely, which meant shaping it, pulling all the old material away and restarting from scratch and building up to an inverted saucer to the ground that you see now, with the new 11-strip wicket block in the middle.
The design of the playing surface here is really what is seen as the ideal model. It's called an inverted saucer, so if you imagine turning a saucer upside down, you've literally got that little centrepiece which sits somewhat proud, and then it cambers away gently to all corners consistently. It's the ideal cricket playing surface, large boundaries, so it's fit for purpose for all the different types of cricket that we have now. It has a fully integrated sand-based drainage system and a wonderful block. It's the creme de la creme of cricket ovals.
We'll be trying to get the wicket as hard and as fast as possible, so it's conducive to run scoring, and obviously keeps the bowlers in it a little bit, but we want to see lots of runs scored here, and so it's a great spectacle for the public.
If you think back to the marvellous 200 that Nathan Astle got against England, which was one of the last Test matches at Lancaster Park, as it then was. Kids haven't been able to watch that. They've had the odd one-dayer until the earthquake. They've had nothing since. So their heroes haven't been playing in Christchurch. So to have them back here, I think it's enormous for kids. And of course, Saturday morning down out here, you'll have kids playing on this oval. It's just not for professional cricketers. That's only a very, very small part of the use that will be made of this ground. So this place is covered with children on Saturday morning.
From all reports, speaking to all the guys, especially the Canterbury guys who obviously play there quite a lot, they say it's just an amazing experience. And I think to have a ground so close to the centre of the city as well, in a park-like setting, it's going to be pretty hard to compare with that for most of us. So it's great to have a standalone cricket ground in Christchurch, and hopefully there's plenty of runs in it for us batsmen, and there's a bit of swing for the bowlers as well. I have heard that it swings at times as well, so I'm sure it'll be a great cricket wicket, and Boxing Day Test match will be well followed, no doubt, and hopefully we can start to create some history at that ground.
You know, it's going to be a pretty special moment, you know, especially here in my hometown, and having the family support. It's going to be, you know, pretty special, and you know, it's a sellout crowd. So, you know, I think it's going to be an amazing atmosphere.
What we're building here is a legacy for the next 100+ years for the city, and giving people the confidence to actually see that things can happen, and they are happening. You know, the eyes of the world will be on us for the Cricket World Cup, and I think it'll give the cricketing community and the Christchurch community generally a real shot in the arm that we're back. You know, we're back.
One of the greatest losses to the cricketing community in Christchurch has been for the children that have been growing up for the last 10 or 12 years without an international cricket ground, because you watch it on the telly, but you can't beat going there, and you watch your heroes play, and you'd learn about the game, because you can have all the coaching in the world, but it's basically, as a kid, you got to watch and you got to look, and it's best done live.
Well, it makes it achievable. If you can walk where your heroes are walking and play where they're playing, then that's a lot easier to live the dream. And also to have fun at the ground. If you're in a big concrete jungle and you can't go and play your games out on the grass and have a bit of fun, you need a break. You can't sit and watch cricket. Well, I couldn't as a kid for 8 hours a day. You need to get out there, and part of it is playing your own games out the back. So with Hagley Oval being a lot of grass, the banks are around, there's space, and the encouragement of that sort of interactive play in between, and those little games, the byplay and the games that go along the side, are just as important as the main game.
Wreckage of that massive earthquake that struck Christchurch, we have the perfect picture of a cricket ground full to capacity, a bright sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. And if this is not the true meaning of Test cricket, Chris Harris, what is?
Oh, it's just magnificent, as I said out of the toss. It's just an amazing day for Christchurch and Canterbury people. Couldn't ask for a better day weather-wise. I think today is a wonderful indication of how important cricket is to Christchurch and to Canterbury. We've got a full house here at the new Hagley Oval, which is fantastic, and just so rapt that we've got cricket back here.
We had a look at the outfield, Chris Harris, pristine. Everything is what we expected, what we heard it was going to be like when it was finally approved, I suppose is the word. There was opposition, of course, but I think that when you sit and look at this, you can pretty much discount some of the opposition. To my mind anyway. I know I don't have to live here. You do.
Well, as you said, the outfield's like a carpet, which is great from a cricketing point of view, but it's also bad because if you do make a mistake, you can never blame the outfield and say you got a bad bounce, because it is just magnificent.
Oh no, you definitely get nervous. You know, you put a lot of time and spend a lot of hours out there in the middle on each strip, so and that can change from the game to game that you're playing on. It's up to the players to do their bit as well, but it's definitely nerve-wracking when the first ball's being bowled.
The applause goes out for Tom Latham and Hamish Rutherford, who come out to face for New Zealand. Tom Latham is going to take strike, and he will have that opportunity to play the first ball on this ground in Test cricket. He slips over. It's a dead ball.
Sometimes if you don't get the spikes and you get slightly on the edge of your boot, you can just skate like a skater. Exactly what happened.
The bowler now is going to go back and bowl that first ball again. Here's Lakmar bowling to Latham, and Latham leaves the first delivery. Oh, good carry, good bounce, all the way through to J.R. Warden behind the stumps.
Fantastic carry.
And this is what you want on the first day. Pace, bounce, a little bit of movement, something to encourage bowlers early on.
One of the, I suppose, uniqueness of this ground is that because it's in the iconic park in Christchurch, Hagley Park, we need to pack everything down within 2 days of the test match finishing. Includes scaffolding, tents, marquees, fences, everything. And then we've got a one-day game that is on January the 11th. So about 3 or 4 days after we pack down, we need to pack it all up, or bring it all up again and pack in. So it's just one of those challenging features of operating this ground. But in between, it's accessible. Christchurch public can come and walk through the grounds, walk their dogs across the ground that hopefully Brendan McCullum's just scored 100. So it is quite unique in that way.
Well, here we go again, and McCullum has played it beautifully. And he has 1,000 in a calendar year. Remarkable, remarkable. Well, they can't stop him. They just can't stop him. Oh, that's at 100 miles an hour. They're loving every second of this. That's certainly off the bat. And that's certainly in the crowd again. Brendan McCullum, the fastest Test 100 in New Zealand history. What can't he do? .150 for Brendan McCullum. Staggering. That is so pretty to watch.
On 6 here. Down the wicket he hits it. Mid-off is coming in underneath it and takes the catch. And Brendan McCullum's superb innings ends. He's dismissed for 195.
Well, at last there's a record that evades him. But who cares? Who cares on this day when Test cricket returned to Hagley Oval, and everyone that turned up was so utterly rewarded.
I think today is a day that no one will ever forget. I mean, 8,000 people, more than 1,000 children. They've seen, some amazing batting. They've seen a whole heap of world records. It's an amazing day, and if it was your first day of cricket, you'd certainly be coming back plenty of times. So hopefully Hagley will have plenty more days like today throughout its history, but heck of a day to start.
I think Canterburyans are starting to actually just start to get an inkling of how big this event is going to be. To actually be hosting the opening game of the Cricket World Cup. It's going to be beamed to billions of people, literally. The opportunity for our city, our businesses, our future, and most importantly, in my opinion, our children, to actually see a world event at Hagley Oval. They'll never forget that.
I think for Christchurch to host the Cricket World Cup and have the opening ceremony, I think it's really a thank you and an acknowledgement to what the people of Canterbury have been able to do. And it comes at government level, it comes at local council level. The fact that Canterbury Cricket and New Zealand Cricket want to get in and support it, and we've got everything up and running, I think it's a thank you for all those efforts to what we've achieved. And I reckon it's just absolutely wonderful and out of this world that Christchurch has been chosen to do that here in New Zealand.
Oh, look, I think Christchurch is a mystery piece of the jigsaw puzzle for Cricket World Cup. I think it's going to be really special and people are going to really celebrate it at the time. And I think we probably don't realise, standing here today, just how big that will be and how special it will feel.
This is a huge indicator for us that if we're ready to welcome the world, we're well along our way to recovery. Art's been a huge part of our recovery, sport has been, and to bring that together in an event like the opening ceremony is just sensational for us.
Well, you often don't realise the
hugeness of the total contest until you see the opening ceremony. The fact that it's in Christchurch is the most meaningful part of the whole activity. And we're seeing here a city that's rebuilding, as I say, back in business, and we're absolutely thrilled to be a part of that and to be, in a way, paying a tribute to the people of Christchurch.
We know that there's going to be a very enthusiastic audience that are coming to something that is a reawakening of large events for this city. But from my point of view, I just need to give them the best show I've ever done to make sure that it works, whatever I do.
We certainly don't want to be the same as other opening ceremonies. The ideas that we have are unique to our team. There's also a lot of stuff there that the people won't realise until the night is sort of there. You know, we're keeping a few things up our sleeves, so to speak.
The opening event here will be a magnificent event. You know, they'll probably get over 100,000 people here actually in Hagley Park coming out and just watching all of the show and the events that take place. And then the Sri Lankan game on Valentine's Day will have a real poignance for Christchurch as it sort of again reflects back on the earthquakes that took place, but also on how far the city's come.
The eyes of the world are going to just lock onto the most beautiful, picturesque oval that you could possibly imagine for cricket. And I know that cricket fans all around the world are going to say to themselves, I wish I'd come. And I just think that the city's going to come alive. It's just going to be fantastic.